But first, hello, happy Sunday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever day, whatever time it is where you are, it is good. I know it's good, and we affirm that it is good. So I would love for you to join me with our opening prayer, our centering prayer, as this supports us in moving forward with the message. I welcome the Spirit of truth into my mind and let it grow in my heart. Thank you, God, in, through, and as me. Amen. Ashe. And so it is. So it is, and so it must be. Yes, yes. Well, as I've already shared, we are in the third part of our three-part series, and we're starting to wind it up here as we are on the 11th condition of a miracle. In the first week of this month, we looked at the condition act as if, and that sermon was faith doesn't pretend. Last week, we looked at the 10th condition, engaging the cycle. And that sermon, spirit always multiplies. And I talked about this idea, really breaking down some deep and wonderful and profound concepts around the truth of spirit, the truth of consciousness. One of the things I quoted Dr. Tony Nader, nothing different than consciousness emerges from spirit. Consciousness. Therefore, nothing different from spirit emerges from spirit. And so we recognize that the reason and the way that that miracle can happen is because spirit is everywhere at all times, and every possibility of spirit is everywhere at all times. Also, we recognize that the bread and the loaves were not bread. Bread, the loaves and fish, they were actually consciousness as bread, consciousness as fish. And consciousness, spirit always multiplies. And so that's why it multiplied itself. Right? We talked about some other powerful things there. If you missed that sermon, I invite you to go back to it, but we're moving forward. And we're talking about the 11th condition, which is receiving, right? Again, this is why I said the song was so appropriate. And before I move too much further into the message, I want to highlight there are 3 sermons where I've taught some profound things related to receiving that I want to bring your attention to, because you may want to go back to these sermons, particularly as we move forward with this one. One is the sermon, I Am Receiving Now. And that's from the 7 Habits of Prosperous People series, which was a recent study series. But you can go to our YouTube channel. That was August and September of 2021. So when you're searching for the playlist, or go to the playlist, search for August and September 2021, you'll see that sermon series. And again, this sermon, I Am Receiving Now. The other sermon, it's from the Inside Joke sermon series, which was March 2019. That sermon, I Receive What I Give. I share some powerful things about receiving. And then finally, going way back to our early years in 2014, November of 2014, I taught a series, The Law of Circulation. And in that series, one of the messages there is the art of receiving. And I offer some powerful things there. So I'm going to share some new insights and some new perspectives today, but I think those 3 sermons will offer some additional grounding as you find yourself wanting to really integrate and practice this condition of receiving. So going back to the Alpha passage, we're still looking at this miracle of the loaves and the fishes. Matthew 14:20, part A of that verse, we read something very simple. And all ate and were filled, right? So we know that we've gone through all of the conditions of the miracle. We've gone through the whole process, and Jesus has blessed the bread and broke the bread, and they begin to pass it out, right? He gives it to the disciples, and the disciples begin to pass it out to the people. It multiplies, and all ate and were filled. So what's that telling us? Very simply, all the people, the entire crowd, the thousands of people that were there, received the food, were filled, and were satisfied. So I have a question for you. Do you know how to receive? And I'm going to wait a moment because I want you to really contemplate this question. Do you know how to receive? Ask yourself, do I know how to receive? Now, as you hear the question and as you contemplate the question, hear me asking you and you ask yourself, of course, your immediate answer is yes. Since we all receive at different moments in time and throughout our lives. And while your answer may be yes to this question, experience has shown me that most of you, if not all, really don't know how to receive or understand receiving. And that's why it's a condition that we must understand, learn to practice, and then integrate. Because see, the truth is some of you are blocking your miracle right now because you don't know how to receive. Some of you are sabotaging your miracle right now because you don't know how to receive. Some of you are overlooking your miracle right now because you don't know how to receive. And some of you are missing your miracle altogether because you think you need to be worthy to receive. And finally, some of you will never receive your miracle until you learn how to receive. Do I have your attention? If I have your attention, give me a thumbs up, give me a yes, yes, give me a heart, give me a give me a Lord PG, you on my street today, whatever you want to say. Do I have your attention? So now that we understand that there may be something about receiving that we don't understand. Now, if we consider that possibly we don't fully know how to receive, I want to break down this condition. And there are 3 points that I want to bring us to. 1, be receptive. 2, be filled. And 3, be open. I'm seeing those comments come in. Yes, yes, yes. So let's start with the first point, be receptive. Being receptive simply means preparing to receive. One of the things that I share in those 3 sermons that I gave you to look back at later, one of the things I share, and I think it's in the art of receiving, is that this idea that the best givers are the best receivers. Now, we've talked about giving. That's one of the conditions of a miracle, right? And so it's important to understand that if you truly understand giving, you truly understand receiving. Because after you give, you should expect to receive. Not hope that you're going to receive, not wish, not beg. You should expect. This, of course, is demonstrated as we see Jesus operating with the means that seemed not to be enough in the eyes and in the mind of the disciples, right? But that is not the way in which Jesus operates. And so there was an absolute knowing, there was an absolute expectation. And this is then why the gratitude and the giving thanks in that sermon, the blessing in your blessing, right? When you name it and call it good and speak a blessing over it, that's that confidence. I know I will receive what it is that I have declared. When you understand giving, you should expect to receive in the same way that when you breathe out, you expect to breathe in. Yes, yes. So again, I want to ask you a similar but different question. Do you expect to receive? I'm going to give you a moment. You may have said yes to I know how to receive. Do you expect to receive? Now again, all of you may be answering yes to this question. But the truth is, do you expect to receive or do you expect to be rewarded? Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. I know I'm all in your business today because I want you to get this thing. See, even if you said yes to, yeah, of course, PG, I expect to receive. I want to challenge that a bit. Do you expect to receive or do you expect to be rewarded? Rewarded for your sacrifice. Sacrifice ain't giving. Rewarded for your good deed. Rewarded for following the rules. Talked about our study series of the month. This is not a test. God does not reward or punish. So you don't receive because you followed the rules. You don't receive because you're a good metaphysician. You don't receive because you've memorized some text, as PY always reminds us in the meditation experience. Do you expect to receive or do you expect to be rewarded? Rewarded for your sacrifice. Again, sacrifice is not actually giving. God does not require sacrifice. Therefore, it does not reward sacrifice. If you expect to be rewarded, or if you think your miracle, your dream, your manifestation, or is a demonstration, if you expect to be rewarded, or if you think that your miracle, your dream, your manifestation, your demonstration is a reward, this is a mistake and misunderstanding that must and can be corrected. The false equivalence between receiving and reward immediately suggests that your understanding of giving is off. And so then your receiving will too be off or non-existent. Again, I said the best givers are the best receivers. The best givers understand the law of circulation. The best givers understand that giving and receiving are one in truth. It's just different sides of the same coin. In the same way, this is why I bring us back to something that's very simple and easy to embrace and understand. You exhale, you expect the inhale. The best givers are receptive. And in the 12 Conditions of a Miracle, Todd Michael, he brings us back to a story that I know you all are familiar with, and I may have even referred to it a few Sundays ago. Also, you may remember as we studied spiritual economics, Eric Butterworth takes us to this story in the first chapter of Spiritual Economics, and it's from the First Testament. It's a story of the prophet Elisha and the widow's oil. There was a widow who was in desperate need. She was in a panic because she was in deep debt. This, of course, we can think about the misogyny of that world and the patriarchy of that world. Her husband died, and she was unable to pay some debts that were owed. And according to the law at that time, that meant that her sons would be enslaved in order to pay the debt. And so she was desperate because she also needed her sons. Again, the patriarchal society, as a woman, she needed men in her life so that she could move through her life. So if her sons were taken into slavery and enslaved, she really didn't know what she was going to be able to do, right? This also echoes, for those of you that understand the story of Ruth, right, and Naomi. That was the same thing that really pushes that story. And so that's why the Ruth story is not a love story, right? But I digress. So she was desperate, and she comes to the prophet Elisha because she needed some help. And he asked her, "What do you have in your home?" And she says, "I only have this jar of oil." Now, I pointed back to that because Eric Butterworth teaches us and reminds us to get rid of our onlyness in the same way that the disciples came to Jesus and said, "We only have this fish and loaves," right? We get rid of that consciousness of onlyness. She had something, she possessed something. And so then he said to get vessels, as many vessels as you can. If you don't have any, then borrow them from your neighbors. And that borrowing is symbolic of needing to shift your mind and consciousness, right? So if you don't feel that you have, well, you need to come to CSC and borrow some truth, right? In the sense of this is uplifting your consciousness so that you can remember what is true. And so, of course, she takes the jar of oil. He says, shut the door and begin to fill the jars with oil, fill the jars with oil, with the purpose that then she would take that oil and sell it. And so she did. She filled the jars that she had gotten. And according to the story, it says that when there were no more vessels, the oil ran out. She was able to take that oil and sell it, repay her debts, and her sons did not go into slavery. Okay. Now, one of the other beautiful symbols of this story that has to do with receptivity is what you heard me say was when there were no more vessels. Vessels represents thoughts and consciousness, ways of thinking, seeing, and believing and expecting. So we could say when there was no more expectation, the oil ran out. When there is no receptivity, there is nowhere for infinite supply to flow or fill. So we must remain receptive as we see symbolically having jars available so that the oil, which is representative of the flow, the infinite supply of life of God that always is available, that is always flowing, that is infinite, endless. But we got to have some jars to fill it. And so that's our receptivity. Right? And so in our consciousness, we must constantly be in that place of preparing. What this also means, this is not in my notes, but I need to say this. What this also means is that there comes a point in time when we need to let go of the affirming and the writing and the vision boarding. We talked about this summer in the masterclass, right? Like you do all of these things, whether it's prosperity through writing or prosperity through pictures or, prosperity through all of these different means that you can activate your prosperity consciousness. Eventually you need to be in the space of like, I'm complete. Right? Imagine in this story if Jesus had just kept praying, oh God, yes, and I know, thank you, God, for this fish, Lord, and thank you for these loaves, God, and thank you for these. And he just was praying and praying and praying. But the people needed to eat. Right? At some point, you got to be in you're prepared, you're in the receptive place. So again, I'm in somebody's business there. That's what you've been doing. You've just been writing and affirming and writing and affirming and journaling and affirming and writing and journaling and affirming and visioning and vision boarding and da-da-da-da-da. But you're not receptive. Be receptive. Now, the second point is my favorite point. I say this all the time. Usually the second point ends up being my favorite point. Be filled. Because the title of this sermon is Don't Fail to Be Filled. And we go back to the Alpha passage, Matthew 14:20. What does it say? And all ate and were filled. Another translation reads, and all ate and were satisfied. And if we look at the Greek word that's translated to filled or satisfied, it's a word kortazo, right? And it's a beautiful word because it means to fill, to feed, or to satisfy. And as you dig into the definition, one of the things I love is it says kortazo also points to gorge, as in supply food in abundance. So it's important to understand that it says, and were filled or satisfied. What the writer wanted us to understand is that it was a feast and the people feasted. You may not have really got that, right? When you read or hear, and all ate and were filled. But what the writer wanted us to understand, that word kortazo, it was a feast and the people feasted. Now, last month, as I was doing my morning affirmative journaling, I was doing this exercise I called just naming my good, right? And I was just naming good as I know it, good as I see it, good as I desire it. And when I got to the end of the page, I wrote, I am satisfied. And at first, I kind of questioned that, right? Because I think maybe it's just me, but I think for many of us, we equate satisfaction with the bare minimum, right? Like, oh, I'm satisfied, or he's satisfied. Like, I've had enough in that sense. And so my inquisitive mind took me to Webster's because I wanted to shift that if I needed to shift that. I wanted to understand, was there a limitation in my consciousness that I'm affirming I am satisfied and naming that? And when I went to Webster's, I had church all by myself. Because when I went to Webster's, it says satisfied means pleased. I am pleased. Satisfied means content. Satisfied means paid in full. And then as I look to the synonyms of satisfied, blissful, delighted, glad, happy, tickled, joyful. So what does this have to do with receiving? When you receive your miracle, when you receive your dream, your blessings, your way out of no way, your demonstration, how long do you live in being pleased, content, happy, joyful, blissful, and tickled? I had another question for you. Do you feast on your miracle? Do you let your miracle engorge you, just as it's truly described in this story? Some of you spend more energy and more time talking about the problem instead of the miracle. I trust this is opening someone's eyes today to see why PY and I are always sticklers about how you share your prosperity reports, right? We say often and often and often again that when you're talking about the good that you've experienced, when you're sharing your miracle, when you're sharing your demonstration, when you're sharing your dream realized, that ain't the time to talk about the problem. because you're actually giving energy to the problem, right? But what being filled is all about is living in the bliss, the contentment, being pleased and showing how pleased, being tickled, being happy, being joyful, being paid in full, being engorged by your miracle. There's something that PY and I do, and we learned and adopted this from Esther and Jerry Hicks, who we love. They're a Pisces and Cancer couple, and we're a Pisces and Cancer couple. So we just get them, right? And it's a beautiful thing that we do. Again, that we know that Esther and Jerry do. When Jerry was here, Esther probably still talks to him and does it in this way. But we talk about, we celebrate, we laugh, remember, and remind ourselves over and over again about all the good we experience and have experienced in our lives, right? This is what Abraham is referring to when we hear Abraham Hicks talking about milking your good. And so we'll talk about, it could be a manifestation that happened ages ago, right? We talk about it like it just happened, because what does it do? We're living in the feasting of the miracle. We're allowing ourselves to be good. We talk about good that happened on our first date back in 2009, and we talk about good that happened yesterday. We'll do things that we already know we're enjoy about, things we already know that we're celebrating. I could talk about this sweatshirt. I love this sweatshirt, right? I think this was a Christmas gift a couple years ago. I don't know. But as I'm wearing this and know that I love it, I'll say something to PY like, did I tell you I love this sweatshirt? It just feels good. I just love the way it looks. And did I tell you that I love camo? I love camo everything. She knows that already. That's not the point, right? I'm being filled. I'm being in joy. I'm being in delight. I'm being tickled about something that I received years ago, and yet I am living in the joy and the experience of it. And so this is gratitude, but it's beyond gratitude. It's true gratitude. But see, we just think gratitude is like saying thank you that one time. Oh, I'm grateful. This is why I love to think about appreciation as an expression of gratitude. So when we read in the story that the people ate and were filled, ate and were satisfied, ate and were engorged, when was the last time? When was the last time that you allowed yourself to feast on your miracle, to feast on your answered prayer, to feast on the way out of no way? And again, I'm coming back to this, because I hear it and see it all the time. You feast on the problem, even when you've had the answer. You feast on how bad it was, even when it's already changed. You feast on how little you had, even when you have more now. You feast on the weeks and weeks and months and sometimes even years it took before you got the job that you want to have, rather than feasting on, I have this job. I love it. It's wonderful. I love the commute. I love the people. I love all the places I can go to lunch around my job. I love the hours. I love the vacation package. I love my health insurance. Right? I see it all the time on social media. I'm thinking about it now related to jobs. After 3 months and 11 days and 55 hours, I have finally accepted a position. That's feasting on the problem. Another thing that I see on social media, again, I'm just going to be in your business. And this is a personal pet peeve of mine, and I trust it'll meet you where you are and you'll stop it. I did a thing. And then you share some good. See, because what you're doing there, you're subtly and low-key muting the good. Right? What that's also communicating, because it's a thing that's in so many people's minds. Well, I know a lot of people are suffering right now. I know a lot of people are having good times right now. I know somebody may be experiencing death in their family. Somebody might not have a job. Somebody might not have money. This might be going on here. This might be going on there. Well, first of all, if you wait for everybody on planet Earth to be having a good time, you ain't never going to share anything. So stop the I did a thing. Stop muting your good. And be filled. Feast on your good, feast on your miracle, feast on your demonstration. And those that are in alignment will feast with you and celebrate with you. And as we love to say, if this is new to you, this is part of the reason why we have the CSC Live group, because it's a place for you to practice. It's a contained place where there's a agreement around that, and you can share your good without any preambles about how bad it was, without any explanation of the problem, without any explanation about how long it took. Be filled. And so as we practice that, we are constantly filled and filled again. And then guess what? We keep receiving more and more good that satisfies. We keep receiving more and more good that keeps us tickled. We keep receiving more good that keeps us pleased and content and paid in full. I keep thinking about Rakim every time I say that. Be receptive, be filled, and finally, be open. Being open is related to being receptive, right? Receptivity requires openness. We must be open and receptive. But here, when I speak about openness, it's really related to the three secrets of answered prayer. Shout out to those that are in Affirmative Prayer Mastermind, right? But of course, this is something we've been teaching all throughout the time of CSC. That one of the three secrets of answered prayer is we must welcome everything in. And that requires a spirit and a consciousness of openness, of receptivity. Because your miracle, your answer, your demonstration may not initially look like the answer, the miracle, or the demonstration. As we go back to this miracle story, the 2 fish and 5 loaves did not look like the solution to feeding thousands of people. Yes, yes. And then this takes us back to 2 of the conditions that we talked about. 1, the first condition of emptiness, and the 4th condition of maximizing. Because practicing the condition of emptiness is how you make connection with the self, capital S self, with reality, capital R reality, which is beyond and before time and space. And so then daily connection with spirit, practicing the presence and interaction with this field of being will cause you to see things in the external world differently. And it is that shift in mind. This is why in A Course in Miracles lesson, right, when we read that lesson, above all else, I want to see things differently, right? That's the willingness that it first takes. You realize that it's possible to see the fish and loaves as more than it appears to be, and that it can become more than it appears to be. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Because if I look at it according to the old thought, it's taking me to not enough. It's taking me to lack. It's taking me to fear. It's taking me to scarcity. It's taking me to, oh no, what did I do wrong? It's taking me to, maybe I need to beg and convince and tap dance for God, and then God will give me a miracle. Daily connection and interaction will cause you to see things in the external world differently. You will be open and available to now see with the eyes of spirit. To see from your holiness. Of Course in Miracles again, my holiness envelops all that I see. So then maximizing then is the practice of welcoming everything in. You will welcome everything in, not based on what you see, but based on what you know. If you know, as we talked about last week, that nothing different from spirit emerges from spirit. If you know, as we talked about last week, that spirit is everywhere at all times and every possibility exists everywhere at all times, then you know you are never in lack. You know that you are never stuck. You know that you are worthy of any shift, change, or transformation that you desire. You will see with the eyes of Christ in you, with the eyes of the truth in you. You will think with the mind of Christ within you, with the mind of truth in you. And then you will see what others may not see. You will see a business opportunity where someone else only sees risk. You will see a beautiful home where someone else only sees an undesirable neighborhood. You will see a goal or dream working out for you easily and effortlessly where someone else only sees all the ways it won't work out. You will see potential for a financial windfall where someone else only sees a potential for problems. as you are open, you then practice and move into the posture of welcoming everything in, which is exactly what we see Jesus, the truth, do in this demonstration. That which appeared to not be enough, he did not reject. He didn't cuss out the disciple like, what y'all think I'm gonna do with this? You see these thousands of people over here. What for real? What am I supposed to do with that? He didn't get annoyed with them. He said, bring it here, bring it to me. Because I know something. My eyes don't know. But my union with the power and presence within me knows that spirit always multiplies. So I'm not worried about what my eyes are showing me. I'm not dismayed by what my eyes are showing me. I'm not worried about what other people think. I'm not dismayed by what other people think or see. For it is done to me as I believe and according to my beliefs. Be open. So at the beginning of this sermon, I asked you a question. Do you know how to receive? Now, while you may have answered yes to that question at the beginning, I wonder what your answer is now. This is not and was never a question to invoke shame or blame. This was a question to call you to move on up a little higher, to rise up in consciousness. Because you see, the spiritual path is always a path of becoming. And the path of becoming always requires a letting go to embrace whatever that new thing is, right? And the letting go is not that energy of I need to cut people off and, closed-minded people, I can't be around them. No, it's not that. I'm going to visit my daughter in Maryland on Tuesday. I have to let go of New York to be in Maryland. That's all. So as the spiritual path is a process of becoming, and that requires a letting go, which, by the way, letting go is a giving. We're always growing and learning, and we're always learning and growing. So this is not a moment or an opportunity, and I will not allow you to sulk in any way. It's not a moment or opportunity for shame and blame and guilt. Sit up straight, hold your head up high, and rise up in consciousness. Because the truth within you will not allow you to operate the way you've been operating. The truth within you will not allow you to continue to miss, overlook, sabotage, or dismiss your miracle. Today, you have expanded your understanding of what it means to receive and to practice this 11th condition of receiving. Be receptive, be filled, be open. And as I said, there are 3 sermons that you can find on our YouTube channel that will expand your understanding even more. I am receiving now from the 7 Habits of Prosperous People series. That's August and September of 2021. You can find that playlist. The Art of Receiving, which is from the Law of Circulation series, November 2014. That goes back to the early days of CSC. And I Receive What I Give from the series The Inside Joke, March 2019. Now, next Sunday, we will come to the 12th and final condition, which is recycling. And then we'll talk about how do we embody and practice these conditions as we move forward. But for now, let today's truth work in you. Let it work on you so that your vessels never run out and so that you never, ever, ever, ever fail to be filled. I am so grateful for this truth. And to this truth, I simply say amen, ashe, and so it is.